You might disagree, but Joe Flacco has the right perspective when it comes to being a mentor for the Browns rookie quarterbacks. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Joe Flacco gets candid about his role as a mentor. If one of the veterans has to start week one, it should be Flacco. I'll explain why. And I'm going to rile some people up with this one, but charting stats this time of year is just patently silly. I do want to thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus content on some weekends as well. And it's totally free to you. Just hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. And of course, at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, we can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comment section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. And I think Joe Flacco is taking the right approach to his role as a mentor for this quarterback room in these Cleveland Browns in general, because I think the mentorship label gets thrown around a lot very loosely to certain players, and especially at the quarterback position, when it's like you're viewed as a bridge quarterback or a stopgap quarterback or somebody who's paving the way for the next thing, the next quarterback, the next player who's going to take your job. And we expect that guy to be in Flacco's position to come in and basically just be like the teacher, the Jedi master training the Padawan to these young guys. And I don't know that that's fair to label somebody as that. And so this is what brings me to Joe Flacco's comments from Wednesday when he met with the media at OTAs. Because I think he brings up a really valid point here in terms of the way that the mentorship conversation gets framed, both within the media, but also among fans when it comes to this sport, when it comes to football, when it comes to the quarterback position and training a rookie to eventually take over. And I think he's right about the way he's going about it, even though I think some people might disagree and sort of prove his point here. I'm going to play you this clip. It's about a minute long. I'll react on the other side, but I think his commentary is really, really sound. And I think he has the right approach to how the mentorship role, if you will, is supposed to be treated as an NFL competitor.
It's a talking point. You can kind of like use it because it's a good question to bait somebody into answering, and no matter how they answer it, it kind of makes the guy that's answering it look bad. If I say I don't want to be a mentor, I look bad. If I say I do want to be a mentor, then I look like an idiot that doesn't care about being good and playing football. So it's one of those questions that no matter what I say, you guys can write what you want to write about it. And there's a lot of questions like that. That's why you end up having to try to avoid them. I tend to try to be honest, and I've said I'm not a mentor. I play football. And in a quarterback room, there's a lot of times there's been a ton of times where there's learning experiences, and I have a lot of experience, and I can talk on things, and hopefully they listen. But it's not necessarily like my job to like make sure they listen to me. And, hey, like hopefully you have a really good relationship with the guys that are in the room, and you naturally want to do that, But that was a long-winded answer, but that's ultimately why I think you guys ask it.
I think that's really, really well said. Really, really poignant point from Joe Flacco. Just this idea that if you say as a player, you're not here to be a mentor, you get labeled a certain way as being selfish or, not being a good teammate. And if you say you are going to be a mentor, then everyone just, downplays your value to the team, and they just assume, well, he's not committed. He's not here to help the team win right now. He's just here to like get this next guy ready and be like that trainer to a young quarterback. And I think that that's probably fair in terms of like the perception that either of those answers comes with. And it's media related. It's also, I think, fan related. I think fans sometimes take those narratives and run with them as well and frame a guy a certain way based on how he answers it. And I do think to this point, this is like the third time Flacco's talked about the mentorship thing and that idea and that concept. And he has said the same thing over and over again. And I think the first couple times he said it, people did sort of start to turn towards, well, hey, he's not here to be a mentor. Like this guy doesn't care about his teammates. And I think that's unfair. I do. I think if you're Joe Flacco, and this is why I think he's taking the perfect approach to this role and the responsibilities that come with it, because that's the thing. There's responsibilities that come with it, but it's not like his cross to bear, if you will, either. Like he's not being brought in here and paid to the Browns didn't sign him and say, hey, your job is to get these quarterbacks ready for the next level. No, they brought him in here because they want him to play for the Browns potentially, and they want him to compete for the starting job, and they believe he can help them win football games. That's why he's here. And he sort of he expounded on that. He alluded to that by saying, I'm here to play football. I'm a football player. I want to play. I want to compete. I want to start. That's his goal, is to be the starting quarterback on this team and go out and win football games, and not be some mentor to some young quarterback or two young quarterbacks in this instance. That's his goal. Like, he still wants to play football. And listen, as much as fans can be critical of players for certain ways they go about things, I think everybody can agree that you want your players to be here and be competitive, and you want them to be here and have that desire to, like, I want to be great. I want to start. I want to play. You don't want some guy who's just here freeloading off of the Browns, if you will, getting a check just to kind of hang around and be a good teammate. Like, that being a good teammate is part of the puzzle. But yes, like, you want players who are passionate about playing football and about winning and about playing at a high level. That's what Joe Flacco still is, even at the ripe old age of 40. He has that competitive drive. And so I have no problem with him admitting that that's what still is fueling him to be here. And that is, it's not his job to come in and just like get young quarterbacks prepared for the next level. That's not what he was brought here for. But along those lines, and this is the other thing he sort of pointed to, I think the mentorship piece just kind of happens naturally if you are going about your business the right way. And Joe Flacco certainly does. He is a pro's pro in that way. He shows up, he puts the work in. He does, as he mentioned, have a wealth of experience that he can sort of reflect back on and hopefully instill in the two young quarterbacks if they have questions or when they talk to him and all these different things. At one point during that same press conference, he joked that Dillon Gabriel was trying to like copy his cadence. So he's already picking up on something that he wants to do like Joe Flacco. And Shedeur Sanders, I think he mentioned, was like asking him questions about how he saw a certain play. So like those things matter. And that's where I say it happens naturally. If he's going about his business the right way, if he's showing up to work, the mentorship piece will just kind of take hold without him having to put in any extra effort to teach these guys. They will come to him. They will see leading by example is a thing too. And him showing up to work and doing what he's doing is going to rub off on those guys in some capacity without him deliberately having to sit down and be like, here's the XYZ on all these different things. So I think that's the important thing to keep in mind here. It's not that Joe Flacco can't be a mentor. It's not that he won't try to instill as much knowledge in these young guys as he can. It's just that he's not making that his priority, because it's not his priority. His priority is to come in here, compete for the starting job, be a football player, be a quarterback potentially for this team. And that's what he's focused on. So I appreciated the candidness from Flacco. I think he's on the right track here. I think he's taking the total right approach to this quote unquote mentorship role that people are expecting him to have. And I do think just by nature of who Joe Flacco is, it will rub off on those young guys, and they'll pick up some things from him that will help them throughout their careers. Speaking of Joe Flacco, if one of the veterans has to start the season under center and they're not going to go with a rookie, I think Flacco has to be the guy. I'll explain why coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live during the action with player props, performance trends, and same game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Maybe you think the Knicks are going to pull off the latest comeback from down 3-1 in a series and shock the Pacers, who have dominated throughout most of that series. Maybe you think Tyrese Haliburton is due for another buzzer beater at the end of Game 6 to clinch that one and send the Pacers to the NBA Finals. You can play in-game parlays and pair a bunch of different props together to win big. If you've got a good read on who's seeding up, why not back it with the same game parlay? If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So while we're on the topic of Joe Flacco, and I did mention in my episode on Thursday that Flacco, to me, looked like the best quarterback out there. Now, that's to be expected. Flacco is the veteran of the group, the elder statesman of the group. He's seen some things. He's got 17 years of experience under his belt. And on top of that, he knows this offense. I expected him to look the most comfortable. I expected him to have a feel for the way things are supposed to look and the way things are supposed to sort of function and run within the offense. So it's not surprising that he maybe looked the best on day one of OTAs. It's about what these guys continue to look like as they progress through OTAs, through the summer, get to training camp, and then we'll sort of see how the quarterback competition shakes out. But as I thought more and more about this, how I think this is going to go, and I've been very clear about this, to me, I get the sense the Browns want to start one of these veterans week 1, give them a stretch of games, see how the season's going. If it starts to falter, then you pivot to the rookies. One of the rookies first, then you maybe pivot to the other one later on in the season. I think the other guy that doesn't start week 1 gets traded, and that's how you kind of handle this quarterback situation. I've been very clear about how I think this ultimately is going to play out, even though I also said this week that if it was up to me, I'd rather play one of the rookies, because the goal for me is figure out if you have a franchise quarterback, you got to play those guys for as many games as possible. Now, they have to sell it to the locker room too, and that's the key thing here. Like, they can't put one of those guys out there if they just look terrible during training camp, and they can't actually sell that they're trying to win football games. But I still think, like, by the time training camp rolls around, I think one of them could emerge as one of those rookies, could maybe flash a little bit, and you could convince people on the team and in their locker room that, hey, we're going to roll with this guy because we think there's some upside here. But I do think ultimately they want to slow play with those two. And I think that's kind of just been suggested by the way they're handling them. Minimal 11-on-11 reps for both Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel. I think they're trying to sort of just ease them into things. And so because of that, I do think one of these veterans is going to start the season under center. I understand the logic there. I understand the thought process there. Now, if I'm picking between the two, and I know that the organization seems to be ranting and raving about Joe Flacco, about Kenny Pickett, rather. We've heard them numerous times talk about how they loved that trade and they were happy to get him. They think he's a competitor, and they are treating him sort of as their Sam Darnold. They believe he can revive his career here, and that's all fine and good. But I think Flacco, if you're going to pick between the two veterans who you want to start week 1, and that's the way they're going to go about this, I think it should be Flacco. And the biggest reason why is because history suggests that he will get the most out of the guys around him and make them better. He will accelerate them and accentuate them in this offense and turn them into good players because of just the player that he is and because of the experience that he has and because he knows what he's doing. I go back to 2023. Perfect example, right? Before Joe Flacco, David Njoku was having just a ho-hum season. He was okay. He was having a fine season. It wasn't anything special. And then Joe Flacco takes over with those last 5 games, and David Njoku explodes. He puts up most of his yards, most of his touchdowns, all those things in those final 5 that stretch of games with Joe Flacco. Finishes with 882 yards, 6 touchdowns, ends up going to the Pro Bowl because of it. I also point to same season somebody like Elijah Moore, who did the exact same thing in 2023, where once Joe Flacco was out there, once Joe Flacco was the guy throwing the passes to him, he ended up putting up 640 yards, 2 touchdowns, did some really nice things. He had his second most receptions of his career, which was the most up until this past season when he had 61 receptions. So the numbers suggest that he's going to get the most out of even some of your role players on this team. And I understand Flacco's going to come with the gunslinger mentality. There's going to be some interceptions. There's probably going to be some pick sixes. And you got to live with some of those things. I do think he's going to do a better job at mitigating those errors more so than Jameis Winston did, because I think he's proven that throughout his career, and I think he proved that here in Cleveland just a couple years ago. But he raises players' games. That is evident to me. And on a young team that is in a rebuilding phase, I know they're not going to ever admit that they're like in a rebuild or use the word rebuild or whatever. That's just such a taboo thing to say within a football franchise. But given the state of this team, that they're relying on a lot of young guys this year. The running back room is two rookies headlining it in Quinshon Judkins and Dillon Sampson. You added Harold Fannin Jr., who caught a touchdown pass from Flacco during red zone work at the end of practice on Wednesday. You have a young receiver room that is still trying to sort of find their way and find some roles for at least a handful of these guys. There are so many spots right now that need to just like kind of go out and play football and have somebody reliable under center who can sort of lead that charge and get them the football and allow them to make plays. And if you're looking for that, Joe Flacco was 100% the guy. He is the guy you're looking for. I have too many questions still about Kenny Pickett. I know he went to Philly. I know he revived his career in that way. We tend to do this where a flamed out first round pick goes somewhere else, is a backup, has a good season with that team. We saw the same thing with Mitch Trubisky in Buffalo, right? Then he goes to Pittsburgh and he's the exact same guy he was. Kenny Pickett, same thing. He goes to Philly, cleanses himself. That's what I always call it. It's like a quarterback cleansing, where the stink from what they did previously kind of fades off and you start to think like, well, maybe there's something there. Maybe he learned some things. And there is room to believe that can happen. Sam Darnold just last year is proof of that, right? He went to San Francisco and then he ends up with Minnesota last year, and he has this great season, leads them to the playoffs. But then when you got to the more important games of the season, some of his flaws did sort of rear their ugly head again. And so you still sort of saw some of that is in there with him, but he did revive his career. And so I think the Browns do believe that Kenny Pickett can do the same thing. I do think that they think he was cleansed with Philly and that was a better situation for him. Heck, he even talked about how it was a better situation in his press conference on Wednesday, where he mentioned, Philly was the best thing that could have happened to me. I learned so much. He talked about the scheme being similar to what they're doing here in Cleveland with Kevin Stefanski, other than like terminology. So that's all, good to hear from Kenny Pickett's standpoint. Like, he believes and they believe that there's something there that they can tap into and that he can be even better for it. But I still subscribe to the idea that, like, I think Kenny Pickett is who he is. And I don't know that he's going to raise anybody's game with the players around him. Joe Flacco is 100% going to do that. And like I said, with a young team that is trying to learn and develop and grow, and again, going through a bit of a rebuild, you want the quarterback. If you're picking between these two, and this is like, again, if one of the rookies stands out, you got to go with one of the rookies, in my opinion. Or if both of them stand out, you start with the rookies. But if the goal here is get to the season, start one of these vets at the beginning of the year, slow play it with the rookie quarterbacks, get them in later on, be patient with them, let them grow and develop before we just thrust them into action, then I think if I'm choosing between the two vets, I have to go with Flacco. Because I keep thinking about that 2023 season. I know it was a small sample size, but I just trust that Flacco is going to raise these guys' games to another level. I saw there was a video. Jerry Jeudy was mic'd up at OTAs this week, and there was and in the video he's like talking to Flacco about different things and certain throws that he made and all this different stuff. And he did that with Kenny Pickett too. I'm not trying to like single out Kenny Pickett as like he doesn't talk to his guys about the plays. It's just like there's something in the way that Flacco speaks about it. And the connection with his players that you like, he brings so much perspective to the plays, to the field, to what he's explaining. And I thought it was kind of a cool moment to just have him say, like, if you do this, I'm going to do this. Like, if you keep going, I'm going to hold, and I'll hold that guy over here, and then I'll get you open. Like, a light bulb went on for me of remembering that 2023 season and those types of conversations he was having with the guys he had that year, that he was throwing to that year, and the numbers that they ended up putting up because of it. There's a chance like a number of these guys could thrive with Flacco under center. And for that reason, even if it means you start the year like 1-5, I think I'm starting Flacco. If I'm picking a vet to start at the beginning of the year, I'd rather go with the rookies again. But if I'm picking a vet to start at the beginning of the year, I think it has to be Flacco, because I just think he's going to raise the players around him more so than Kenny Pickett's going to. Speaking of the quarterbacks, we know the competition is going to continue to dominate the conversation here, but I just have to put this out there. Anybody who's reading into the charted quarterback stats from OTAs, you are a little bit off kilter. It's a silly practice this time of year, and I will explain coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. I think what I meant to say was, if you're somebody who's reading into any of the charted stats for quarterbacks this time of year, then you sort of need to get a grip on reality. And that might be harsh. I'm sure this segment could fire up a lot of people in the grand scheme of things, because I know that people live and die by those numbers, and they live and die by the little clips that surface on social media. But this goes back to what I tried to tell everybody before I had a chance to go out to OTAs live and in person on Wednesday. And it also is in the sentiments of Kevin Stefanski as well, who flat out has said to us in the media multiple times, I wouldn't read into much of anything that's happening during OTAs right now. And I think that should be the baseline for where this conversation goes. You will not catch me charting quarterback stats, or really any player's stats, this time of year specifically, because there's no point. It is patently ridiculous, patently silly. There's no use in doing it, because there's not really much to learn from just the stat. Like, I can throw out a box score of any game and say, look what this guy did in this game, and say, like, he played well. But then you sort of get the context of certain things, and you realize, like, oh, maybe there's certain reasons why these things happen. And that's never more true than at OTAs. Like, yes, Shedeur Sanders did throw 3 touchdown passes on Wednesday. They were against the 3rd and 4th string guys. I'm not taking that away from him. It's good that he's doing that against the 3rd and 4th stringers. But, like, we can't read into every little thing. Like, you can't just see a box score, see numbers, and make any grand declarations off of it without understanding the context of, like, how those numbers came to be. How that happened. Like, Joe Flacco didn't throw, I don't think he threw an interception on Wednesday that I saw, but he almost threw an interception. He had one that was right in the defender's hand, and it was like, that didn't end up on a stat line, but he almost threw an interception. Am I supposed to, like, read into that? And as I've been trying to say, there's just so much context to consider with these drills. There's no pads. Defensive linemen aren't really, like, rushing the passer per se, because they're not really getting after the quarterbacks. And you end up with these ridiculous graphics showing quarterback stats, their TDs, their interceptions, their completions, without understanding what that unit was going against, or who that unit was going against, who that quarterback was going against, whether or not there was a ball that was dropped or caught by a player that maybe shouldn't have been, or was tipped, or whatever. There's just no context to it. And as I've continued to say, and this goes back to Kevin Stefanski's point on all this, and anybody who's claiming that Kevin Stefanski's out here saying that they're tracking all these stats and everything, he has never, ever, ever said that. Never. He has continually said, the only thing he's continued to say is that you shouldn't read into much of anything this time of year. And that's why I'm warning you against looking into those things and, like, getting caught up in the stats that people are putting out there as they chart these things. I have no time for charting throws this time of year. It's a silly practice to me, particularly this time of year. And learning is the important thing that should be going on at OTAs. Process is key this time of year. Execution is key this time of year. I'm less worried about the results and how many completions they had, how many touchdowns they had, how many interceptions they had. I'm more worried about, like, what they're learning, and if the stuff that they're learning in the meeting rooms and the playbook, if that is making its way onto the field. If you can clearly see that it's translating from in film sessions out onto the field, and they're learning as they go. Are they messing up in the huddle and they have to re-huddle and run plays again? Are they able to go out and like, can Shedeur Sanders direct guys and be like, hey, you got to be here on this play. And he knows what he's telling everybody because he knows the playbook already. Those are the types of things you're looking for. And like, yes, sometimes you're running certain drills where it's like, hey, we're going to stand in like a base cover 2, and we just want you to read it. And sometimes he might misread it. Somebody might misread it and make a bad throw, and it gets intercepted. But then what's the correction that you make off of that? Are you seeing them make that correction? Are you seeing them learn from their mistakes? Are you seeing them, make sure that they're commanding the huddle the right way? Those are the types of things that matter to me this time of year. Not some ancillary box score, quarterback numbers with completions and touchdowns and interceptions. I'm not reading into those things. And I refuse, especially this time of year, to chart any quarterback stats. And I warn you against like using those in any argument you want to make for these quarterbacks, because this time of year, that's just not what it's about. That is not what's important. And like, that'll come. Training camp will be the time where I get it. Like, we're going to track those things, keep score, because now you're in the thick of this competition and you're counting down the days till week 1, and you're going to have a starting quarterback sort of figured out as you inch closer and closer to the start of the regular season. I understand it at that time of year. I think that's totally fine. And I will likely be engaging in the quarterback stat tracking at that stage. But right now, man, I'm just not doing it. I refuse to do it because it doesn't make any sense right now. You're not going to learn a lot about these guys from just the stats, the blanket stats that they put out there. And really, unless you're there, you're not going to get a chance to learn a lot about them. And so I know not everyone is going to get a chance to be there. These aren't really open to the public, but it's really just about like, as you're trying to find what you should be taking away from OTAs, read people's work that when they're writing about like their takeaways and things that they observed and how guys looked and if there was any mistakes made. Like, those are the things that you should be picking up on right now, not, some just fanciful logging of quarterback stats that's put into a nice fancy graphic for social media. I refuse to go there, and you shouldn't read into that stuff. And if you are, I think you're going about this phase of the offseason program all wrong. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. Plenty more to come next week. We're working on a guest for next week. We'll have another OTA practice to react to before veteran minicamp gets going. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and make Locked On Browns your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting, or you can keep it local by checking out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Have a nice weekend. See ya.